What is up, people? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Rahul Saigal. As promised, part 2 of the game design masterclass that was delivered to the students of Game to Maker. Now, if you haven't already watched part 1, here it is. So do check it out. This episode will make much more sense if you actually watched part 1. So today we're going to be going deeper into game level design, and I'm going to be really explaining the fundamentals and principles of game design. So make sure you let me know how you like this class, if it was good, if it was useful to you, and if you liked it, then I will release more like this. So enjoy. Let's go.
So now let's talk about the 3 principles of level design. First, we talked about the objectives of level design, and now we're talking about the principles of level design, and these are theme, pace, and choice. What are they? Let's get into them. First of all is theme. What is the theme? The theme is a cultural and emotional context of the level, right? As in, like, what kind of game world are you in? What is the theme? As in, are you playing a game? If you're looking at Max Payne 2, which is, Max Payne 2 has been one of my all-time favorite games because it has a very, very strong and very, very beautifully embedded theme into the game, right? It is noir, it's film noir, it's kind of dark, it's depressing because the main protagonist is not a happy guy. He's someone whose family died, he's miserable, he's not a happy guy, he doesn't crack jokes, he's just permanently kind of sad, and he's just pretty much not even bordering, I think he's probably clinically depressed. Okay. So, and the entire game has this, right? And it's set in a very particular time. The emotions of that particular game are not happy emotions. They're not. So the cultural and emotional context of the level, also what time it's set in, what period it's set in. So theme is really, really important, right? A game can have an overall theme with a slightly different theme for different levels. So you can have a game which is, whatever, you can have Call of Duty or Crisis or whatever. And even within that, you can have one which is set in the snow, one level which is set in the desert, one level which is set in, like, I don't know, a city or like a nightclub or whatever it is, right? So each level can have a different theme, right? Now, also theme is very, very important for bringing out emotions in players, because remember, guys, at the end of the day, games are nothing but us, the game developers, the game designers, artists, programmers. We are just basically manipulating the emotions of the players, right? Essentially, that's what it is, like it or not. And we do it in a big way through the theme of the game. So it's very important when you decide upon how is the player going to feel? How do we want the player to feel in this game, in this level? And that's a big part of it. Okay. Now, very important is that within the game, you have to decide upon a theme, and the gameplay elements and whatever, and the art and everything should be in line with the theme that you have chosen. It has to be consistent, right? Like, for example, obstacles, like the physical barriers that you have in the game, should be as per the theme. They should be according to the theme of the game. So obviously, if it's like a post-apocalyptic scene or game, then obviously you'll have like broken down cars and like crashed airliners and stuff, which is going to be appropriate in a post-apocalyptic scene. Those are going to be the physical barriers and obstacles, right? Enemies also, obviously. This is, I think, Fallout Shelter. Yeah, I played this game a lot. So obviously the enemies are going to be appropriate. They're not mutants because, outside it's post-apocalyptic game. Pathfinding mechanism for level should also be in line with the theme. So the puzzles and everything that you want the player to learn. And so a puzzle doesn't really have to be a very obvious kind of puzzle. It could be even something that you have to meet someone and find someone and find out some information, which is also a kind of puzzle, right? So the best games, the most convincing game environments, the most beautiful game world that you talked about, you have no idea in what depth the people, the level designers, and the teams go and do their research. It's insane, right? Which is why, to be a game designer, you have to be kind of like a designer of everything. I remember before I became a game designer, I suddenly realized one day, I'm like, man, I know a little bit about so much shit because I had interest in everything. I used to love reading books. I used to be curious about wildlife and space and black holes goals and freaking characters and psychology and military hardware and so much shit. I used to be like interested in so much stuff, so much random stuff. And I was like, what's the point of all this? And then I became a game designer. I was like, right. So my life was setting me up to be a game designer because I had all this random information about so many things. So that's a good one. Zach is asking, how can we make pathfinding in line with the theme of the game? So, like I said, for example, if you have a post apocalyptic game in which you have to send the player to another level, right? And say, suppose the player has to actually find the path to an area or a safe zone where there are survivors, then perhaps you can place objects that are not so apocalyptic, like a plant or something which is out of the ordinary, right? Everything's kind of destroyed, and you place objects such as plants, something which is slightly alive or something which is regenerating, so that the player actually looks at that and says, oh, okay, and kind of goes towards that, right? Next, pace. Now, this is the tempo of the game. This is super, super important. And this is something that most players from experience and playing the game is pace. Because what will happen is that you don't want to be doing the same thing all the time. Even in an action game, even in an FPS, it never happens that you are just constantly facing wave after wave after wave after wave of enemies. It doesn't happen. Otherwise, the player will just get tired, right? So which is why the game varies things, the tempo. Even if it's a FPS, the game will vary the tempo of the game, right? The player may be asked to do different things to vary the gameplay. Variation of the pace of the gameplay allows the players to take a breath and prepare for the next challenge while still holding his attention. Okay, it keeps the player focused by not letting the gameplay get monotonous and predictable. And this is not easy because see, you can make a plan, right? Because it's your game. If you're the developer, if you're the level designer, you will not be unable to understand if the pace of the game is good or bad. You can maybe plan and say, okay, I'm going to start the game off at a slow pace, level of exploration, and then I'm going to have there are going to be some enemies, and then I'm going to take it up a little bit. And you can have a beautiful plan for pacing out your game, and you can have a beat chart. I'm going to be explaining beat chart probably in the next class as well, right? You can even have a beat chart for your game, but then at the end of the day, it's going to be like you will still not understand if your pace is good or bad. It'll have to be a tester. It'll have to be someone from the outside who's going to come in and play your game, and only then you will realize, okay? Because remember, you suck at testing your own game. That's just the way it is, okay? So factors of pacing level tutorial. So the player needs to be taught the necessary skills and conventions to successfully play the level, right? Usually a prompted execution of a simpler version of a task. So for example, never be ashamed of having something too simple, right? Normally gamers, when they create their own games, they make it too hard. They're like, I'm a gamer, it needs to be hard. But it's okay. You can have something very, very simple that the player just kind of like comes in and finishes very easily, right? So, for example, if there has to be a jump in the end, have a simple jump, an easy jump for the player to do in the beginning, and then next time make the jump harder and then harder and harder. Okay. Factors for pacing levels, exploration. This is really good because whatever kind of game you're playing, whatever kind of game you're making, it's always nice to have some time where the player can just kind of take a bit of a break and be like, okay, even though this is a shooter, I don't have to shoot right now. I can just go and explore the game world a little bit. I can do something. I can walk around. I can examine the game world. And whenever I want to get really back into it, I can get back into the game. So exploration, creating exploratory areas where there is not too much happening, like very, very, very light on enemies. Put one chota mota enemy here, so ek thappad mara mar gaya kinds, So the player is encouraged to move around the game world with a reduced level of challenge. The idea is for the player to become immersed in the world and be visually involved as far as possible, and can be done by holding out the promise of some valuable object if the player finds it. So there's no point in saying, explore, look at the trees, look at the sky, look at the birds. Players usually don't respond to that. They usually respond to, there's something there for you to find, some artifact or a hidden entrance or something cool. Then they'll go and explore, right? Don't just be like, this is an exploration area and I want you to explore. They'd be like, why should I explore this? So exploration is a really good option as well, right? Next up, very, very important when it comes to pacing levels is a skill test. A skill test is basically so the skills that the player builds up in the level. So for example, you introduce some new skills in one particular level, and those skills are, double jump and shoot and grappling hook or sniper rifle. Okay, you give the player a sniper rifle in that level, and you're like, okay, dude, you're a sniper now. And then at the end of that level, before the player goes to the next level, you have to test the skills. You have to make sure that the player has understood, because what's going to happen is that maybe in this level you're given a sniper rifle, and in the next level the player is going to be put in a situation where the player has to use the sniper rifle really, really well to progress or complete that mission or whatever. And if you don't make sure that the player has understood how to use the sniper rifle properly, then the player is going to get frustrated. So, which is why one very, very important thing in game design, level design, is give the player something and make them use it immediately. Don't be like, okay, here's a sniper rifle, and then put it inside your inventory and then just forget about it. No, you give a sniper rifle when it's time to use the sniper rifle, right? You give the player a double jump ability and immediately make that player use that double jump ability or that grappling hook or whatever it is, right? So the skill test is what the player builds up in the level. The skills that the player builds up in the level will be put to test in the skill test. It gives the player a period of intense, focused gameplay that, once completed, gives the player a sense of achievement, right? It's an amazing thing to get a new skill, and then you're able to actually use it. Maybe you'll die a couple of dozen times, that's okay. But when you finish it, you just like, you feel electrified. You're so fucking happy in a video game when you just like, you've done something new, you've learned something new, and just like killed a few bunch of people with your new weapon, right? It's like, for me, the weapon in which I just like, oh, who plays Halo here? Any Halo players? Right. Which is the best weapon in Halo? Anybody?
It's a sword for me.
Yeah, sword is nice. Sword is nice. But
Like, sword and the needler. I like the needler for some reason.
okay, let's see if anybody has the same choice as me. Like the best freaking weapon in video games ever. And you can see this guy up here, right? So, nah, nobody has it. Nah. It's the gravity hammer. It's the
Ah,
gravity hammer.
right.
It's like you just fucking thing, and you just go, you smash. You feel like the fucking Hulk with that thing. You feel like the most powerful being in the universe with a gravity hammer. You can you can fucking kill anybody with that thing. You know what I mean? Just like it goes boom. Anyway, so the skill test gives the player a period of intense, focused gameplay that, once completed, gives the player a sense of achievement. Boss battles are a common way to give the player a skill test. They focus the player's fighting skills toward defeating a formidable enemy, right? So even a skill test, even the boss battle, the mini boss battle, whatever, is also a skill test. But you have to give, at the end of each level, you have to give the player a skill test. Okay. And like, have you guys ever noticed, especially when I was playing Halo, that what will happen is that you'll have this entire period in which there'll be like this boom, 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 boom enemies, and then the player will just enter this building and just be going through alleyways and just tunnels for minutes and minutes and minutes. There's nothing there. You're just going through these tunnels and just hearing some sounds, right? And that's basically a time in with the player's like, okay, the designer's like, okay, dude, just calm down, kind of like quiet a little bit. That's good pacing.
Also, in the older games, due to technology, they also slowed it down, right? Because the other level can load up quickly, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yep.